Now, besides the need for a web development server, there also are other reasons for switching to a better development setup. Because you might not have noticed it yet, but actually you might want a better developer experience. Thus far, the way we wrote code, it worked, but it has certain flaws. Our current way of writing and testing the Vue app has flaws. So let's see what our current state is. At the moment, we always need to reload the page whenever we make any change to our code. So for example, here, if I go to my JavaScript file and let's say I do change some data here, change the name to Manuel Lorenzo, and I want to see this on the page, after saving the JavaScript file, I need to reload the page. Now, this might not sound like a bad thing. I mean, it's really easy and quick to do, but if you're working on an application, on a web application, for hours and days, and you're writing a lot of code and you want to test a lot of things, always having to reload can be very annoying. It's also worth noting that when you reload, of course, you lose all the state of your application. If this was expanded and you reload, you're back to the initial loading state again. And those tiny things can add up and actually cost you a lot of valuable time and make development unnecessarily harder or simply take longer. And that's not something you might want. In addition, at the moment in our IDE, in our code editor, Visual Studio Code, the support we get by that tool is highly limited. For example, the auto-completion is highly limited. If I, for example, want to call Vue create app, Visual Studio Code doesn't even understand that there is a Vue object available. If I type a dot, it doesn't know which methods I can call on this. It suggests create app here because I used it before in that file, but if I didn't, it wouldn't know that it exists. So that's also something which is annoying. It would be nicer to get better IDE support, to get more IDE auto-completion, and for example, to also get warnings and errors if we add a typo. At the moment, if I call create app like this, because I forgot the E, yes, the app won't work, and we'll get an error here in the browser, in the JavaScript console, but we don't get any warning in the editor. And it would be nice to get a better support here so that we don't even try to run code which has a simple typo like this. Now, last but not least, thus far I always worked with just one HTML and one JavaScript file. And we could add more files and combine them, but we would have to manage all those imports with script source tags, for example, manually. And for multiple HTML files, it wouldn't even be that easy, because whilst we could have multiple files, if we switch between those files, we would always in the end load a new page and therefore lose all the state that might have been saved in JavaScript. So any intermediate results of calculations and so on. So currently we're kind of limited regarding how we can split our code, how we can make our code more readable. And of course, at the moment, having just one JavaScript file works. We don't have that much code. But it's easy to imagine that as we build more and more complex applications, we have more and more code, and we might want to split that code across multiple files to make every file itself a bit more readable. And for example, things like this template here, which we have for this component, having it in a string like this is a bit annoying, but at the moment it's all we can do. We have no better way of defining this template. We can't do it in the HTML file because for components, we can't mount them to HTML as we do with Vue apps. So that's another thing that would be great if we could get rid of it. And therefore, our current state clearly has some room for improvement. Our wanted state might look like this. It would be great if saved changes, so whenever we change something in code and we save those changes, would be auto-detected and then the page would automatically reload, or maybe even better than that, not just reload, but simply update that part of the page that did change and therefore keep all our state around. That would be great. It would save us a lot of time. The IDE, so the code editor we're using, should provide better autocompletion and hints to make sure that we're able to find errors quicker and avoid writing code that doesn't work. And it would be great if we would have an easy time splitting our code across multiple files, defining the templates of components in a nicer way, and using modern JavaScript features like ES modules for exporting and importing JavaScript code into each other for that. That would be nice, and that's our wanted state. And that's exactly where the Vue CLI is able to help us. So let's find out what exactly the Vue CLI is, how it helps us, and how we use it.